Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this masterclass that's on a systems approach, Agrifood Systems Transformation and Practical Applications. My name is Oisin Gill, and I'm leading the education program, the World Food Forum Global Youth Action Initiative. It is my pleasure to welcome my colleagues from Agrifood Systems and Food Safety Division here in FAO that will be leading this masterclass today. So look forward to learning from you. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Agrifood Systems Specialist Dalia Mattoni, who will be facilitating the session. Over to you, Dalia.
Thank you, Oisin, and welcome also from me, also from the whole team. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Dalia Mattoni, and I work for the Food Systems and Food Safety Division here in FAO, but I'm also a researcher at the Department of Agriculture at the University of Pisa. I'm very happy to be moderating and participating in the session today with the rest of the team, who I will introduce as the class unfolds. So as Oisin was saying, this is a second masterclass actually on the theme of systems approaches to food systems transformation. And while the first masterclass focused on the conceptual groundings of taking a systems approach and introduced the 6 elements of the systems approach, this year we will take a closer look at practical examples of taking such an approach. For those of you who weren't able to follow the first masterclass, don't worry. We will certainly go through some of the contents of that masterclass. We'll just dig in a little bit further and give more practical examples. So the structure of the class is as follows. We will first of all be hearing from Corinna Hawkes, who's the director of the Food Systems and Food Safety Division here at FAO, who will introduce this class by explaining why taking such an approach is so important for FAO and for our community as a whole. I will then present an updated version of the systems approach framework and its 6 elements, and give you very practical examples of where the approach has been taken in the world based on FAO's work, but not only, we're also moving beyond FAO. We will be then hearing from 3 guests, 3 esteemed colleagues from FAO, who will give a live account of what it has meant to take a systems approach in their work. And then we will open up for you, for questions coming from you. We'll have 15 minutes for that. And in fact, I'd like to remind you to please use the Q&A box to post any question that you want to pose to any of our speakers. So we're looking forward to that. So let's start off with Corinna. I have a question for you, please, Corinna, to kickstart this class. So changing the way food systems operate has been a challenge for many reasons. Efforts are often remain fragmented and real change can feel slow. From your perspective, what have been the biggest barriers to achieving truly sustainable food systems, and how can systems approach help us weave together solutions that are more enduring and resilient?
Thanks so much, Dalia. It's great to be here, and good day to everyone who's joined today. Let me start by saying that agri-food systems have so much potential to address so many of the world's challenges. The big barrier that we face is that we as a collective community are not yet taking the opportunity to weave together the work we are doing in different parts of the system. The agri-food system is full of people. People working to achieve many goals: produce more food, generate economic value, protect the environment, enhance healthy diets. There are so many different activities undertaken by many different institutions, all the way from fork to farm, from plate to gate, from throat to boat. But these activities and institutions are just not aligned to achieve collectively the ultimate purpose of agri-food systems, which is to deliver good food for all, for today and for tomorrow. And we must recognise as well that there are competing priorities and power imbalances. So when you pull a thread, it affects all the other ones. There's a ripple effect. So navigating the way we affect each other requires dialogue, negotiation, and coalition building. So that means if we're going to unlock the full potential of agri-food systems, we need as a community to purposefully change how those different threads are woven together to advance food security and nutrition for all. This means growing enough food, healthy food for all, powering up economies, stewarding our planet, and enabling people to make a living from agri-food, with each of these aspects reinforcing the other. So changing how agri-food systems function simply cannot be done through isolated intervention. And advancing any solution will require us to stitch together the threads through smarter and stronger relationships between people, projects, and policies to emerge with a very different looking agri-food system. What we would say a transformed agri-food system that is inclusive, resilient, and sustainable, and where the actions that we are taking work together efficiently. So change is doing more with the threads that we already have and choosing the strong threads and weaving them together, connecting, enhancing, and expanding what is strong, not what's wrong. And that's not going to be easy, but it is necessary for our survival as a planet and as a species. So in the work we're doing at FAO, we're trying to move beyond only diagnosing the challenges to focus also on how to make change by identifying what it will take to stitch together the work already going on. We want to see activities and institutions reinforce each other rather than undermine each other. And we have found that there are pragmatic, concrete, achievable changes that can be made to shift from silos to systems, from isolation to connection. And that's what we call the 6 elements of these systems approach. So back to you, Dalia, to take us through these elements and provide examples of what is taking this more systemic approach means in practice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Corinna. That was an excellent introduction to the presentation that I will now make. Let me share, hang on, let me just, I want to share my slides with you. Here it is. Okay. Can you see them?
We can see them there.
Yes,
Yeah,
great.
yeah.
Thanks.
Just slideshow.
Okay, so before I go into the presentation, I really want to make it clear that this is a collective effort. This is, let's say, the core team that has been working on these issues for the past months, but we've also been working with colleagues from outside of the Agri-Food Systems and Food Safety Division, and we're extremely grateful for the collaboration that is obviously ongoing. Just a reminder of the challenge and the opportunity. I took this definition of what we mean by sustainable food systems from the HLP. There are many more out there, but they more or less point in the same direction. So sustainable food systems are supposed to deliver a number of outcomes. First and foremost, food, healthy diets. That's the first thing they have to deliver. But that they have to deliver it in such a way that it doesn't create, that is not to the detriment to the social and environmental basis of our communities. So a way of shortly putting this is good food for all today and tomorrow. So that's the aim. That's what we're aiming for. But agri-food systems today are not delivering on that. They're not delivering on healthy diets as much as they could be. They're not delivering on social and environmental welfare, and they're not delivering on economic welfare either as much as they could be. But there is a huge opportunity, as Corinna was saying, for people engaged in agri-food systems to be able to build the relationships so as to allow the food system to really go in that direction. I put this image here, which is taken from FAO's strategic framework. FAO has 4 main objectives which correspond to the outcomes of a sustainable food system. So the idea is to move towards better production, better environment, better nutrition, and better life. And in so doing, move towards the SDGs. So in order to do that, we need to change something. The way things have worked so far hasn't been to its maximum potential. And specifically, we need to be taking a systems approach. So here I've put a definition of systems approach that we're using at the moment. And the The emphasis here is on connection, just as Corinna was saying, weaving different threads together so that they can come together and be stronger. In order to clarify things, last year we also proposed a diagram, an image that captures what we mean by systems approach. We've slightly revised it. I just want to walk you through it. We're walking towards systems. Sorry. What we're aiming for, our North Star, are the SDGs. So it's the 4 betters, ultimately reaching the SDGs. That's what we're trying to aim with sustainable food systems. In order to do that, we need to transform our agri-food systems. And that means that from a very practical, concrete point of view, we need to transform the practices. So the practices of people involved in the agri-food system so that we can reach that Northern Star. And in turn, this means changing the way we do things. This means changing our approach. And in our view, the systems approach is made up of 6 elements which need to be changed. One of them is systems doing, which refers to the policies, to the actions, to the interventions that give incentives and disincentives to people to change, to transform their practices. These are underpinned by having access to data, knowledge, and information, a governance system that works, and obviously resources in the shape of investments. And at the foundation of this, which is why we put it at the bottom, changing mindsets is crucial. It's important for people to be thinking in terms of systems. And as actions are taken, it's also important to learn and adapt. So learning by doing and adapting. And the circle is because this is an ongoing process that that occurs throughout the implementation of policies and interventions. On the side, you'll see two pillars which are fundamental for all of this. And one of them is leadership, vision, guidance, directionality. So keeping our eyes on the North Star. And the other one is innovation, technical innovation, but also social innovation. So really changing the way we work. So let me walk you through each of the elements of the food system. So let's start with systems knowledge. When we talk about systems knowledge, we are really talking about 2 big areas of work. One of them is looking at system-wide analyses of agri-food systems. So no longer collecting data maybe only on specific sectors, but trying to collect a wider, broader array of data that can help us move in the direction of sustainability, which will also mean looking at identifying potential for trade-offs and co-benefits. That's one aspect of it. The second aspect is the inclusivity. So knowledge, not only in terms of Western mainstream scientific ways of thinking, but also include other forms of knowledge, which can be local knowledge or indigenous peoples' knowledge, for example. And I just want to point out a number of examples here. In terms of system-wide analysis of agri-food systems, FAO has been spearheading a number of these in these last years. And here you see 2 examples. I want to focus on the first one that you see on your screens on the right. And it's a Sustainable Agri-Food Systems Intelligence. Here you see the example of Sierra Leone. So these assessments take into consideration food systems as a whole, and they examine the many interconnections across the food system. Based on the data collected, stakeholders jointly identify key sustainability questions. This is an innovation of this tool. And the answers to the key sustainability questions help identify areas of action across the food system. So for example, in Sierra Leone, one of the key sustainability questions of crucial importance for the country revolved around why agricultural production is currently unable to meet the national food and nutritional requirements of the country. That was one of the key questions they wanted to answer. The leverage point identified by a series of stakeholders pointed to the need to improve the production environment to increase production, productivity, and food diversity. So that's just one of the outcomes of having a system-wide analysis of agri-food system. The second example I want to share with you concerns the co-generation of knowledge. And in this respect, agroecology is really a prime example, since the concept itself of co-creation of knowledge, so creating knowledge with various stakeholders is really central to agroecology. Agroecology is really about collaborative learning among various stakeholders. So not just the farmers, not only the researchers, but also all the community members. And it uses a strong participatory learning model. Farmer field schools are one of the most well-known practical applications of this approach and has been used widely in many countries and for the past years now. The third example relates to city level, the importance of collecting system-wide assessments at city level. But one of our guest speakers, which we'll be hearing from later on, will speak about that. So I want him to talk more about this later on. The second element of the food systems approach is governance. And here too, I want to put emphasis on two aspects of governance. One is the whole area of shared vision, direction, and leadership, which is crucial. The other one is inclusivity. So the importance of having everybody around the table to decide, once we have the knowledge, what kind of actions are we going to take. So different stakeholders coming from different disciplines, from different sectors, but also with different perspectives and different interests, as Corinna was alluding to in her introduction. So there are two important examples of vision leadership and the creation of spaces where different points of view could be expressed and taken into considerations. And they are Ireland and Rwanda. These are the ones I want to share with you today. In the case of Ireland, its latest agri-food strategy, 2030, was developed in quite an innovative way. A number of committees and subcommittees made up of different stakeholders were set up. Stakeholders range from environmental activists to industry to academia, farmers' unions, banks. They all had a voice in expressing their views about the shape of the strategy. Even single citizens could actually express their views. The process was closely followed and supported by the Ministry of Agriculture, who provided that oversight, that vision, that direction that I was talking about. And the outcome of this process was an overarching agri-food strategy and action plan that allowed to align subsectoral policies. So when subsectoral policies on specific commodities were written up, for example, livestock or dairy, which are very important for Ireland, it was possible to have a certain coherence among them. Rwanda followed a very similar approach with a strong oversight there from the Prime Minister's office this time through its overall Vision 2050. In this vision, there was a recognition that in order to reach the national vision, agriculture and food were a key component. And from there, the commitment to improve interinstitutional coordination and open up a number of participatory processes, of which Rwanda's agricultural sector working group is an example at national level. Other working groups were also created at local level so as to create a broad range of governance setups. In this case, the outcome of the process were a series of strategic plans for agricultural transformation that, precisely thanks to the collaborative process, now include aspects related to environmental sustainability, rural-urban development, and gender equality, much more than they used to in the past. And the third example I'd like to share with you is the one of Morocco's National Hub, which is a strong example of shared vision and leadership. But here too, we'll be hearing from our guest later on, so I won't go into the details of that now. A third element is systems doing. Here we're really almost at the core, let's say, of the systems approach. So you have knowledge and you have governance that shape the way that then decisions are made and policies actually designed and implemented. And here there are three elements to take into consideration. One is more strategic. So it's about writing policies and actions that consider priority subsystems as an entry point for transformative change across the system. The other concept is close to the win-win concept that we may have heard of. So it's about crafting policies that can hit multiple outcomes of the food system, but doing so in a very conscious way. And the other one is about writing up or considering in a package of policies measures that can tackle, mitigate, or eliminate, if possible, difficult expected trade-offs. So an excellent example of an entry point for transformative change is that of school meal programs. They have been implemented across the world and have had substantial success in reaching multiple outcomes of the food system. But here too, we've invited someone who's very well-versed with school feeding programs, so we'll hear more about that from her later. In terms of crafting co-benefits, mitigating trade-offs, we chose the city of New York that has been very active in this respect. In 2018, its Office of Food Policy, after having observed that its food purchase schemes was producing high levels of greenhouse gas emissions, decided to lower. So it changed its way of procuring food and it lowered its purchase of animal products by 10%. And it decided to buy more food from small food enterprises owned by minority groups or women. So in doing that, public spending on food ended up contributing to several food systems outcomes. It contributed to lowering greenhouse gas emissions, it increased local economic activity, and reduced the risk of diet-related chronic disease among New York City residents. Now, we cannot not speak of investments and resources when we're talking about a systems approach. Knowledge, governance, and doings, designing policies and actions obviously need resources, need funding. And it needs funding and it needs budget lines to be designed and thought of in a different way. So setting budgets that incentivize people to work across sectoral departments, for example, identifying a number of resource partners that can work collectively, so without gaps or overlaps in deploying investments. It means building in flexibility, so being flexible enough to change the investment priorities as activities unfold. And it also means having a long-term vision of system change. And we wanted to share with you a very recent example, actually, of something which occurred in Morocco. In 2024, the government of Morocco and the World Bank formulated a new $200 million program of investment, which is soon to be launched, focusing on food system transformation as a whole. It was a very different way for the World Bank to be working in Morocco. It wasn't the first time, obviously, that the World Bank was investing in that country, but it was doing it in a different way. Traditionally, World Bank investment focused on managing water scarcity, because obviously this is a key issue in the production segment of the food chain. But the World Bank is now exploring new areas such as nutrition, food safety, and food loss and waste reduction. And we'll be hearing more about that from our guest speaker later on, who will be telling us about Morocco. As I was saying, systems thinking is really at the basis of the systems approach. It's important to build mindsets, to be able to see those connections and systems that Corinna was telling us about in the introduction. And here we have two elements that we consider important. One of them is creating the venues, the context for people to come together, to actually dialogue, to exchange coming from different perspectives, and therefore expand the mindsets by listening to what other people have to put on the table. The second element is about building the capacity for that in terms of time and in terms of money, for systems thinking, for collective learning, but also for organizational innovation. So for finding ways of getting people to dialogue and to talk and to come together. So a prime example of that, and I'm sure many of you know this, are the food systems dialogues. The outcomes of the dialogues fed into the Food Systems Summit that took place in 2021. I'm sure you will know about this. I don't need to repeat it. Now, because they brought different stakeholders together, very different stakeholders, so from government to business to scientists, farmers, and civil society, they really ensured a collaborative approach to transforming food systems and facilitated the sharing of experiences, ideas, and innovation among stakeholders. So they truly allowed people to understand each other's perspective and develop a common language. In terms of building the capacity for systems thinking and collective learning, a good example that we wanted to share with you is the recent policy learning program, which was initiated last year by Rwanda's Ministry of Agriculture. And this is aimed at facilitating the uptake of a systems approach inside the government, but also at fostering co-learning among different ministries and departments by bringing them together in training workshops on various relevant topics. And last, but certainly not least, we have systems learning, which is about building the capacities, competences, and capabilities to use a systems approach. Here, keywords are learning by doing and adaptation. So in other words, understanding that once you've designed a policy, a measure or action, the work doesn't finish there. It's very important to collectively come together and constantly observe what's going on in order to understand if it's necessary to adapt. And very probably it will be necessary because systems are always changing, to adapt one's actions in order to move towards a desired objective. And of course, learning is also about assessing progress. So it's also about monitoring and evaluation. And adapting project activities as these unfold is a key aspect of the ICA project, the Integrated Country Approach for boosting decent jobs for youth and agri-food systems, which is why we're proposing it here as a good example. Because the project places a strong emphasis on monitoring and evaluation and learning, but also on setting up collaborating, learning and adapting process. The project has been going on for many years. It's now entering its fourth phase and is focusing on specific countries for the fourth phase. And the collaborating, learning and adapting will particularly focus on learning about the context where jobs are to be created so as to adapt its approach to the specific national, subnational level, collaborating with market actors to think of, test, and upscale good solutions, and then adapting the solutions as the situation evolves. Now, I've walked you through the 6 elements of the food systems approach. For, let's say, pedagogical reasons or for reasons of illustration, we're forced to separate them out. But in reality, in many cases, we see that they're strongly linked and that they actually do come hand in hand and occur in an overlapping fashion. So, for example, when I spoke to you about the work done in Sierra Leone on collecting information, knowledge, using a systems-wide assessments, these were then debated upon, discussed within groups, multi-stakeholder groups, so there was a governance aspect to it. And then they were used to write up specific strategies, so there was a doing aspect to it. So as you see, I separated out the systems knowledge because I wanted to focus more on that in explaining it to you here, but in reality, they are obviously strongly connected. But we'll be talking about this with our guests. And in fact, in thanking you for listening to this presentation, I want to stop sharing and pass the floor on to them. But first of all, I want to introduce them to you. So we have here with us Guido Santini, who is a program coordinator, and he works in the Plant Production and Protection Division. Thank you, Guido, for being here. Then we have Laura De Matteis, who is an Agri-Food Systems expert, and she works for the Food Systems and Food Safety Division. Thank you, Laura, for being here. And Luana Svensson, policy specialist for sustainable public procurement, and she's working for the Food and Nutrition Division here in FAO. Thank you, Luana, for your time. So using the threads metaphor we heard about previously, each of our speakers has worked in context where agri-food systems transformation really depends on weaving together governance, knowledge, leaderships, and new relationships between actors. So I would like to start by asking each one of our speakers to tell us a bit more about their experience and how these threads have come to interact in practice. I will start with you, Guido. You have worked extensively on urban food systems, and your work highlights how knowledge is not just about information, but about relationships and dialogues between actors, policymakers, food value chain nodes, civil society, and other actors. How did your project build these connections to create a more systemic approach to knowledge in the context of your city region food systems project?
Thank you very much, Dalia, and good afternoon, good morning, everybody. I think this question is very relevant. Knowledge is one of the key pillars needed to promote transformative actions at system level. Knowledge is essential because it's the basis to understand the system, to understand the actors involved in the system and their relation, to understand the dynamic of power, the dependence, the interconnections, and the functionality among the different actors. So in our as Dalia mentioned, we have worked in urban food systems, in city region food systems. Basically, what is important to also remind is that cities are somehow the main actors to promote transformation of food systems, to promote a more systemic transformation. Just to give you a bit of background, at the moment, more than half of the global population lives in cities, and we expect to have 2/3 of global population living in cities by 2050. At the same time, at the moment, between 70 and 80% of global food is consumed by cities, and of course, this will increase in the coming decades. So this is just to highlight the importance and the role of cities in promoting this transformation. And as I said, knowledge is the basis for this transformation. So we need to understand how a food system works, where the actors are, what are the main food and commodities that are consumed by the actors involved in a system, where the food comes from, where are the main food sheds, no? So locally or nationally or globally, where the main bottlenecks of the systems are, where the main vulnerabilities of the actors are. We need to really understand all these dynamics to identify the priorities, to build a common vision, and to promote actions, transformative actions at system level. So in our work, we have worked in a number of cities at global level in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia, where we really built a methodology, an approach to assess the food system. As I mentioned, the main aspects that we assess through our approach is the actors involved, from the farmers to the consumers, the main areas where the food comes from, the main commodities consumed, and the flows of these commodities. So where the food comes from, where it goes, and where it stops in the different nodes of the food system. And of course, also the bottlenecks, so where the main vulnerabilities of the systems are. This has been instrumental also to engage with the actors and to facilitate the dialogue among them. So knowledge is a catalyzer. The data are catalyzed to not only to understand the system, but also to create relations and to better understand the role of each of the actors in the system, and also to create better ways to cooperate and to improve the linkages between rural and urban areas. And of course, knowledge is essential to also to create a common vision, to understand what are the conflicts among the different actors, and the the possibility, the rooms for creating common priorities, common vision, and a common direction of travel in the way the system can be transformed. So in our approach, knowledge and planning and governance are very much interlinked. So it's important to remind us that in order to promote transformative actions, we need also a solid and inclusive governance mechanism that is fed by the information, by the knowledge of the system. And the governance is instrumental to also to contribute generating the information, but also to validate the information. So the actors, the stakeholder actors, are the main, let's say, drivers for these. And of course, understanding the system and creating an inclusive governance mechanism is also a key requirement to plan actions that go towards a transformation of the system. So in our approach, and I will be happy to share the manual, the handbook that we have developed, and the toolkit that we use to support a number of cities at global level to better assess the system and also plan transformative actions. In our
Thanks.
approach, sorry, I probably I'm going too long.
No, sorry, but time is a bit tyrannical in these situations. I'm really sorry, Guido. But
I'll
thank you
stop
so much.
here.
Maybe if you want to close with a few lines.
No, I'm just saying
Okay.
that I'll be happy to share the information we have in the chat box, and I'm happy to follow up with additional questions from the audience.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Guido. You touched upon a number of issues. So it's definitely creating relations, the link between knowledge, governance, and doings, and the common directionality, actually. So also, and probably systems thinking too, because coming together allows us to think in terms of, to have a common language, as I was saying. So Laura, over to you. Laura, you have recently been involved in accompanying the Ministry of Agriculture in Morocco to formulate a national roadmap for agri-food systems transformation that I was alluding to in the slides. Can you tell us a bit more about how vision and leadership were instrumental in this process? What did you observe about the relationships that shaped the process and its outcomes?
Absolutely. Thank you, Dalia. Since we are, first of all, thank you everyone for being so active in the chat. I'm loving and I'm trying to respond to some of your inputs, and I hope this my little presentation now will also respond to more of questions that came up on governance, champions, even ecofeminist knowledge. Thank you very much. So because Dalia, you're asking me to talk about vision and leadership, I want to start by sharing a quote by the Secretary General of the Ministry of Agriculture and also national convener of the Food System Summit in Morocco, that last year was invited to a dialogue by the SFS Med project and told us this. He said, everyone wants to leave fossil fuels behind, but also everyone wants their people to be healthy and well nourished. So how do we navigate this multiple agenda? One way to do this is to leverage food systems transformation and tell the other ministries and other sectors that if we coordinate our efforts, this transformation can be an accelerator of your agendas. It is key to work together without overcomplicating governance. And I wanted to start with this quote because I think this is really a testimony to the role that this person, this national convener, played and is playing as a champion. He is really like making a conscious effort intentionally to work across sectors, to get people together, to weave the threads, as Corinna said at the beginning, and sit together at the table. And so over the past 3 years, he's been holding 2 rounds of multi-stakeholder dialogues. And this led to a roadmap that was where both the ministries, the public institutions, but also the civil society, academia contributed to draft a vision that encompasses 3 national strategies under one umbrella. And this vision wants to promote greener agriculture, greener value chains, but also empower human capital, so the people that build those value chains and those agri-food systems, and promote healthy diets. And you're asking me also about relationship, what relationship shaped this process. And also, I think it's important to emphasize that because he's been championing this agenda, he's not only convened this kind of public gathering, but he's also worked behind the scene with bilateral meetings with each of the constituencies to kind of build trust, negotiate, and this helped to come up in July of last year with a governance mechanism that doesn't want to replace what the single ministry should do, but tries to coordinate action. A committee, a national committee for food systems transformation, where the Ministry of Agriculture is sitting in the core group together with the Ministry of Industry and Trade, the Ministry of Health and Social Protection, the Ministry of Energy Transition and Sustainable Development. And here, just to close, two remarks. One is that change can feel slow, we said at the beginning, and yes, it does, because this process took 3 years just to come to light with this roadmap and this committee to come to light. And it's still not perfect because we know that, for example, the Ministry of Water is still not there, that other layers beyond the ministries want to have a stronger role. But also, it's important to have this kind of push by leadership, by a visionary champion that works with patience, works with perseverance, and tries to build alliance. And it's important for us to see the process behind and to, I think, as a development community, to invest in this process. Thank you, Dalia. Close here, and then we can continue our chat as well.
Thank you, Laura, so much for these inspiring words of yours, and thank you also for that reality check. Also telling us about the challenges, the fact that not everybody's on board, that it takes time, that it takes patience. I think they seem like small details, but in the end, they're the ones that really make the difference. So thank you so much for that. Luana, you have researched and worked actively on public procurement of food for schools. Now, school meals link procurement, nutrition, smallholder farmers, and public institutions. How did you navigate these interconnections to turn school feeding into a lever for broader food systems change?
Thank you, Dalia. Thank you all. Dalia, I think school meals is a very interesting, concrete example to showcase how these interconnections happen in practice. Indeed, I think depending on government choices around what food I will purchase for my school meals, such as nutritious, fresh, diversified, but also from who I will purchase my food, such as from smallholder farmers, small and medium enterprise, women, youth producers, and from what type of production practices I will now purchase the food for my school program, such as organic, agroecological. Depending on these choices, school meal programs can deliver multiple benefits related to better nutrition health, improved livelihoods for smallholder farmers, promoting of sustainable agriculture and biodiversity. And to achieve all these goals, you really need a system approach, no? And this is in the core of our work in this area. So a good example that I can share with you on how to navigate this interconnection is the experience of Busia County in Kenya, implemented through a joint initiative by the Alliance of Biodiversity International in SIAD, FAO, and UNEP. Here, the schools were used strategically as an entry point to promote this series of interconnected outcomes and the entry point for food systems transformation. And these outcomes included biodiversity conservation through the promotion of African indigenous vegetables, a group of very nutritious, water efficient, and underutilized vegetables. Also to promote better nutrition for school children through the promotion of dietary diversification on the consumption of these vegetables that arrive to have 17 times more iron than other conventional vegetables. And also the livelihoods of smallholder farmers to increase their production and market access. And to make this work, a series of interconnected interventions were adopted in practice along the food system. So at the school level, they created the demand for these indigenous vegetables to the school's menus. And also they adapted procurement practice because it was not sufficient just to create the demand, but they also need to adapt the procurement practice to align with the local farmers' capabilities. So they also work at the supply side in collaboration with the Ministry of Agriculture. They build the capacity of the smallholder farmers to produce and also to commercialize these types of vegetables. And also they work at the school, the consumer level with nutrition education and awareness campaigns to increase the demand, the acceptability of these vegetables. And also policy level. So there was efforts to establish a local biodiversity conservation policy to ensure long-term sustainability. So you can really see the multiple outcomes they wanted, they interconnected, but also these concrete actions that were taken related to very different actors and institutions. So, and this experience is interesting because also they show very concrete results. So there was really an increased demand for these indigenous vegetables in the schools that grew, for instance, from 400 students to 5,500 students after the project. Also, the supply of vegetables from the local smallholders doubled, including also other types of vegetables as a result of this the capacity building and other activities. And farmers' incomes were assessed to increase by 47% on average, thanks to their access to the institutional markets provided by the schools, and also increase the dietary diversity, not only for the school children, of course, by including these vegetables, but as a spillover effect, these vegetables were started to be selling also in the local markets, creating a virtuous cycle and increase also promoted dietary diversity and their consumption also along the community. So, and the Busia County adopted a biodiversity conservation policy, further embedding these principles in local governance. So I think this is a very powerful illustration of system doing. And you can find more information about this example and also broader work of FAO in this topic in one publication that I am going to share in the chat. So over, thank you.
Thank you, Luana. It really is an excellent example of a systems doing and crafting a policy that can really hit multiple outcomes. So that's great. And for those who are listening, we will be sharing the slides with you, and you will have the email address of the three speakers there. So if you want to interact with the three speakers, find out more about what they're doing, you feel free to write to them. I'm sure they'll be more than welcome. We're running a little bit late, but I think we have about 10 minutes for questions and answers. I see there's so many that have come in. We've chosen some of them because obviously we can't answer to all of them, and I invite those who want to interact with us to please write to us because our emails will all be on the PowerPoint slide. So maybe the first question is, I see there's one for Laura. One of our participants, Catherine, has made the point that there is always a need for stewards for change in food systems to mobilize the various partners, which is exactly what you described in Morocco. Another participant, Asifa, made the point that systems approach need collective action, teamwork, and trust building. So Laura, in the Moroccan experiences, how was trust built? And what was it about the role, status, and skills of the individual who played this stewardship role to build this trust?
Okay, so I see that, yeah, I think Catherine asked who is best suited to cover this role of champion. And I think what is important is the kind of political endorsement of this champion. And this champion in Morocco, as in all the countries that participated to the UN Food Systems Summit, is appointed by the government. So he has this kind of statures, this kind of status, let's say, to actually be leading this process. In this particular case, he was really committed and intentional about bringing together different players. And I think in terms of building trust, I touched upon it briefly, but okay, in addition to the work that he did publicly, let's say, to hold this convening, these meetings. He also invested into this kind of behind the scene conversations, dialogues, negotiations with the different ministries, with the different participants. And now, once the committee was launched with the participation of these four ministries, the civil society was also invited to the dialogue, and they actually reclaimed a stronger role to participate in this committee. And so now in something that is under the table and on the table to be potentially brought forward is the constitution of an assembly that could work like on an equal footing with this committee of ministries, and not like being scattered in individual organizations, but like the civil society coming together in an assembly so that they can speak to the ministerial actors on the same footing, let's say.
Thank you, Laura, for your remarks on that. So really a lot of effort, even behind the scenes, and also a lot of work to be done, not only in setting up formal institutions, but also maybe informal ways of coming together and meeting. And thank you, that's really insightful. The second question is for Luana. You described the implementation of an interconnected approach that brought together activities across the food system. Now, we have a question from Mohammed about how we consider those who benefit from the status quo from not changing the current food system, often for economic reasons. So did you experience this in your work? So somebody who wasn't really that happy about this change. If so, how did you bring people who were more reluctant about change on board?
Thank you, Dalia. No, thank you for the question. I think this is very common when you have change, that are people that are happy with the status quo. But I think I can give some examples, for instance, from Brazil, where we have a very interesting and school feeding program that really embraces a lot of these interconnections. So in one hand, there was the leadership of the government, really to push this agenda, so making the policy, making the law. But there was also a very strong involvement of civil society that in Brazil made really had a key importance to bring this agenda and defend this agenda and defend these changes. So this was this combination, I think of one government commitment, but also the civil society involvement. The farmers were very important to be able to adopt this kind of policy and move it forward. So, and there is, for instance, in the case of Brazil, also for instance where these different stakeholders can come together, they can discuss these policies. So bringing also those who were not happy with the change, let's see though, so where they can negotiate and exchange and to support the implementation, but also the evolution of these policies. Because I think, as we were thinking, nothing is really stable. I think there is also the importance of learning by doing and refining, certain the direction of these policies, of these programs. So this time, I hope it helps with the reply. Thank you.
Thanks, Luana. That's very interesting. And you point to the fact that it's a long system, it's a dynamic system. So even those who might not be so in agreement, let's say, or those who might be a bit lukewarm in debating, in being part of the negotiations, can also change their perspectives. That's really very interesting. Thanks, Luana. There's a question for you, Guido. You mentioned about stakeholders having different perspectives in your work, but potentially leading to conflict, and that you have some tools available to help with that. Joao is asking what tools are available out there to help balance power asymmetries within multi-stakeholder platforms. Could you briefly share any ideas that you might have on this?
Thank you, Dalia. I think the issue of conflicts is really a key element of creating an engagement with stakeholders and building a common vision. Of course, especially in a urban food system context, you have different views and different needs. No, you have farmer representatives, you have post-harvest actors involved in agro industries or markets. You have, of course, you have a public institutions, and you have private sector, no, that is involved, especially in the food supply chain, in food production, in input supply. And each of them, they have probably different needs and different visions. So I don't think if there is a specific tool to converge. It's more than a tool, there is an approach. There is definitely a dialogue that we need to create. And in my view, the issue of knowledge and data and information is essential also to convene the actors and converge towards a common direction, because the knowledge allows to understand the system and allows to identify, to define scenarios for the future, and then set up priorities. So I honestly, I don't have a specific tool to create a common vision and common let's say a convergence among the actors, but definitely the information and the dialogue, no, the facilitation of a dialogue, a scenario, a participatory scenario building is definitely a key exercise to create points of convergence. Of course, there will not, is out of discussion that there will be definitely a common direction of the system, but there could be shared priorities. There could be actors from different backgrounds, from different constituencies that may converge towards common goals. And I'll give you some examples. No, promoting healthy diets could also be a common, let's say, goal for actors involved in the private sector, that maybe their goal is to make a profit. So I'm thinking about maybe agri-food companies, agribusiness, and maybe institutions where they, of course, they do care about the health and nutrition of their population. So if healthy diets become an appealing solution for the consumers, this can also be a way for the private sector to converge in that direction to make a profit. So
Yes, no, absolutely. In fact, there are a number of questions specifically on this topic, of how do we deal with conflicting perspectives, and there were a number of questions on the private sector. So we should have a seminar only on that topic. But thank you for your insight that there isn't really a blueprint, but it's more like an approach. And probably we can work more on this aspect in the systems approach that we're working on. So we're running out of time. I'm really sorry. It was really interesting. There was so many questions. I'm really sorry to have to cut it here. I'm going to give the floor to Corinna to close with some takeaway, let's say, messages or a call for action, really. I want to thank you all. As I said, we will be distributing the PowerPoint. You will have the recording. And if you want to contact us for anything, we'd be happy. We'd be very happy to hear from you. So over to you, Corinna, please.
Thank you, Dalia, and thanks for all of the speakers today, and most of all to the excellent questions, comments from the participants today. What we've been saying and what's come out from your questions is this importance of breaking silos, building connections, coming together for transformative change. Really what came out of your questions today was really the challenges in doing that, the power imbalances, the conflict, the presence of different sectors, and the different types of knowledge, some of which is excluded, some of which is included. So it's really interesting to see that this is something of fundamentally of concern, because it practically ran throughout all of the questions that were asked. So I would like to leave you with a question about, in your own work, how are you helping to break silos and build connections and create these conditions for lasting positive change? Because I suspect that you are, in your everyday work, working to navigate these conflicts, to build coalitions that helps manage these kinds of trade-offs, the issues that when you pull the thread there are these ripple effects. Please share them with us. Please share them with each other. And so that we can answer your questions so much better by learning from the work that you're already doing. So share with us the ways that you're already working in your organization or beyond to break these silos, build connections, navigate these tensions and these competing priorities. There are no easy answers, but by working and engaging on these questions as a community, we'll be able to answer each other's questions. We will be able to share the slides. This masterclass will be put online for anyone to watch. This will include our email, so please do. I'd like to extend an invitation to send us information of how you're working to build bridges, break silos, and to weave together coalitions that can help address these, help unleash and unlock the potential of agri-food systems for lasting change. So thanks very much, Dalia. Thanks very much to the participants, and thanks very much to you. And I look forward to your continued engagement. Thank you.